Chris Lee of Southeastern 14 here. We are continuing our previews of state of the program in SEC football for each particular school. Today we get to Missouri. I've got Gabe DeArmond. He is the best on the Missouri beat. He joins us from PowerMizzou.com. Gabe, thanks for joining us today.
No problem. What's up, Chris? How you doing, man?
Good. Let's talk, and we're doing this late January, so if you're watching this later, things could change. But state of Missouri's program, I think things always change, right?
Right.
State of Missouri's program, a couple of back-to-back 6-win seasons. It's a brutally tough division to compete in. Missouri, really, since the first 2 years in which it won the East, has not come close to that territory again. But lately, he's not been bad either. So just the program seems in a strange place as we enter 2023.
Yeah, I mean, they're a sub 500 program over the last 8 years, I think, since Gary Pinkel retired, or including Gary's last year. And they just, we went into last year and I said, I just want an answer. I want to see if there's progress being made or not. And unfortunately, we didn't get the answer either way. It was just treading water. Like, if you want to see progress, you could see progress. And if you want to see hey, not enough, then you could also make that argument. So we're kind of back in the same position. Year 4 for Eli Drinkwitz, who's the starting quarterback. This guy came in, offensive guru, play caller, all that. He's now hired an offensive coordinator and has had, frankly, pretty bad offenses for the last couple seasons. So Missouri was a lot better on defense last year, but the offense just wasn't good enough. And again, 6-6, lost a bowl game, and kind of in the same place you were in 12 months ago.
Yeah, if you had those magic 8 balls we had when we were a kid, it seems like Missouri's is stuck on ask again later.
Right.
A couple of years ago, I mean, offensively, they were great. They couldn't stop anybody. Last year, offensively, they were below average. The defense got much better. Missouri just seems to be perpetually stuck in that place where, as we said, not bad, not awful. But let's start on offense. Missouri's going to have 3 quarterbacks this year competing for the job. Brady Cook, I did not realize, has perpetual eligibility.
Yes.
Until we had this conversation off air. Missouri also gets a transfer from Miami, and Sam Horn, who was a big-time football and baseball recruit, who I would presume will have a say in where this goes to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Cook, it came out very quickly after Missouri's bowl game, and it was kind of not a great kept secret, but officially came out that he played most of the year, I think, since the first half in week 2 with the torn labrum in his throwing shoulder. So he has had surgery, will miss spring football, but will be back for the fall. He was a guy, you know how this is. It's always the quarterback's fault when the team isn't good enough. And he did have his issues. He wasn't great, but he was middle of the road-ish as far as SEC quarterbacks go, played his best football late in the year. So he's like the incumbent, but I think most people don't really expect him to be the starter. Sam Horn, like you said, was this 4-star top 100 kid. He threw, I think, officially 2 passes last year, played 9 snaps or 11 snaps, something like that. So he redshirted. The hope for Missouri fans has been, hey, year 2 in the program, he's ready. That's the guy. This is the future. Let's go. So those were the only 2 scholarship quarterbacks coming back. They've got a freshman coming in, another 4-star freshman out of Washington State named Jabari Johnson, but he's not going to be here till June. And to expect that kid to really be part of the race is kind of ridiculous. So the debate raged on, will Missouri take a transfer quarterback? I thought all along they would. A lot of people wanted to believe, well, they just need like a camp body, right? People don't seem to understand that's not how you compete in SEC football. You don't just get guys that don't expect to start. You go get guys that expect to start and sort it out on the field. That's what they've done. They got Jake Garcia, who was a top 50 player in the country a couple years ago, signed with Miami, lost out to Tyler Van Dyne. He's played a little bit, thrown, 70 passes, something like that in 2 years, but wasn't going to be the guy at Miami. So he is transferring to Missouri. The eligibility, you talked about, it's a mess. I mean, technically, I think Cook has 2 years left. Garcia has 3 and Horn has 4. But all 3 of those guys are going to compete for the starting job. And I fully expect at least one of those guys will not be on the roster after next season because he won't win the starting job.
Now, was Horn playing baseball for Missouri this spring?
He is. He is. I mean, that was part of the deal when he came to Missouri,
Mhm.
that he could play both. I literally am asked every day, well, how's he going to, how can he do spring football and play baseball? Baseball will mess that up. No, if Sam Horn wants to compete to be the starting quarterback in Missouri, he will do
Come into
football
spring
first, football
practice.
second, football third, and then if you got some extra time, go play ball with your buddies if you want to.
Yeah.
But he's on a football scholarship, and it's full go on football as long as they have football things going on.
Okay, let's talk skill guys because the cupboard here isn't vacant. Cody Schrader, who was a Division II transfer, I think, or maybe Division III, who played pretty well for them. Back Nathaniel Pete back in their running back core. They got Luther Burden, of course, the #1 receiver out of high school last year, who had a nice year, maybe not the impact year people thought. A lot of that was on Missouri's offense, maybe, and not him. Mookie Cooper, I think, back. Seems like there's some parts there to work with. Maybe not great parts, but experience, and that does mean something in this league.
Yeah, there are some pieces. They like the wide receiver room with Burden, Cooper. They had a kid named Mekhi Miller who played a decent amount as a freshman last year, made a couple really big plays down the stretch against Arkansas. So they've got those guys. They hit the portal pretty hard there. They got Theo Weiss, who's a former five-star who played at Oklahoma, who a lot of people. So Dominic Lovett, who was the third leading receiver in the league last year, transferred to Georgia. So what that means is they're going to take Luther Burden from an outside receiver and put him in the slot where Lovett played last year. And they expect that to kind of free him up. Theo Weiss then will be on the outside. Then the other starting guy, could be Mookie Cooper. He could back up Burden in the slot. Could be Mekhi Miller. They also went and got a former 4-star kid named Dennis Jackson, who had been at Ole Miss and just got lost in the shuffle a little bit. He's a fast guy, but wasn't super productive in Oxford. He's coming in. They've got a true freshman out of Kansas City named Josh Manning, who most people expect to play as a freshman. So they've got pieces there. Running back, it's tough because I think most of us consider it the most replaceable position in college football, right? If your line's good, your passing game's good, just find a guy. You'll be okay there. Cody Schrader's a really nice story. Had 2,000 yards at Truman State 2 years ago. Wanted to take his shot at big-time football, walked on at Missouri, ended up winning the starting running back job, and he was fine. He was, I don't know, 600, 700 yards, somewhere in there, averaged 4.5 a carry. He was decent. If you want to have a high-level SEC offense, Cody Schrader's not your starting running back. So I think what most people see as the future, and hopefully the immediate future there, is a 4-star kid named Tavoris Jones that they signed in last year's class with Horn and Burden. And a lot of people listening to this might not know Missouri had the number 12 class in the country that year with Horn, Burden, Tavoris Jones were kind of the headliners. And so I think most people would like to see Tavoris Jones kind of be that guy, because maybe get you back a little more to what you had with Demaria Crockett, Larry Roundtree, Tyler Beatty. Missouri had a pretty good run of running backs, and last year they had serviceable guys, but they didn't have anybody dynamic.
What kind of shape is the offensive line heading into 2023?
And there's your question, right? Because the truth is, I don't care who's throwing it, I don't care who's catching it, and I don't care who's running it. If you don't block well enough, it just doesn't matter. It was not good last year. Now, it was weird because it wasn't consistently awful. They had weeks where they looked decent, but overall not good. Like the Georgia game, for example, played really well against Georgia, but then played pretty poorly against Vanderbilt and against some other teams, So they had a lot of penalties. They're bringing back 4 starters, but it's like and I don't say this to disparage Phil Steele because he does a great job, but one of the big things there is returning experience, right? Well, if you return everybody from a unit that wasn't very good, is it just better just because they're older? Or, Missouri's only gotten 1 transfer so far on the offensive line. I think they're going to hit that in the spring window. But right now, they're just kind of bringing back guys that you saw last year and you said, I don't really think that's good enough. So that's really the question is, will that unit improve enough for the rest of the offense to matter?
I think the interesting part of this team is on defense, Gabe, where they made quantum improvement last year. I mean, the secondary was good. They had a little bit of
they
a
had no
pass
choice.
rush.
There was only one way to go.
Well, and the good thing is you look top 4 tacklers back. I think the secondary, which I thought was pretty good. Rakestraw's back. Abram Strain is back. Tyron Hopper, maybe their best defender. You would be better suited to answer that question than I am. Is back. I mean, I'll look up and down this sheet. Yeah, they lose Isaiah McGuire to the draft and a couple of other guys that are, I guess, I don't know if they're draftable guys or free agent guys, but maybe not the cream of the crop compared to what Missouri's had. But point is, I look down, they got a lot of dudes in the secondary who can play and a lot of guys up front who were pretty active coming back. And I would think as good as they were last year, that bodes very well for 2023.
Yeah, so they bring back 8 starters. One of the guys they're losing is Martez Manuel. He's going to be replaced by a kid named Dalen Carnell, who was a 4-star a couple years ago. And honestly, I thought was better than Manuel last year. Like, I think they get better at that position, which is kind of the safety linebacker hybrid. Blake Baker here calls it the star position. They bring back both starting linebackers and Chad Bailey and Tyron Hopper. They bring back the entire secondary, including their 5th defensive back, a kid named Drayden Norwood. They bring back the defensive tackles. Yeah. What they lose is the 2 defensive ends. They're 2 leading sack guys, and like you understand football, the secondary looks a lot better when the pressure is there, and vice versa, right? So the one question is, where does the pass rush come from? They brought in a couple transfers. They've got some freshmen that are going to play. They've got some young guys that they like, but I think that's the main question on defense. But they do bring back most of, and this is where, like, you can't have a college football conversation without talking about NIL. And this is where it helps. I mean, there are guys, Missouri doesn't have anybody that was a 1st-round pick this year, or even probably a 2nd-round pick like Nick Bolton was a couple years ago. But what they have is a bunch of guys that would get a shot if they'd gone. Jalen Carlisle probably would have gotten drafted. Darius Robinson probably drafted. Tyron Hopper probably drafted late. Well, when you now have the option to tell those guys, yeah, but see, we can get you 6 figures to come play here another year. And now maybe with a good year, you're a 2nd or 3rd rounder rather than a 5th or 6th rounder. That's where it kind of levels the playing field for some of these teams that are trying to make up, because Missouri was legitimately facing a situation where they might have lost almost everybody on defense just because you had guys who were in their 5th year or 6th year, or guys who are going, hey, I can go be a 4th or 5th round pick and take my shot and at least get some money.
Well, it also makes March and August a lot easier on a coordinator too.
Yes, no question. I mean, everybody, they know the system. They know what they're supposed to do. Now it's go do it better than you did it last year.
Okay, Gabe, the schedule. I'm looking at this, and you tell me if this is wrong. This is from the Kansas City Star. They open with South Dakota, so that'll be their FCS game. Middle Tennessee State, who I think they were supposed to play last year, but switched that game around. Kansas State, which was difficult a year ago. And then a to be determined before Vandy. Has that one been filled yet?
The to be determined is Memphis. That game was supposed to be played in Memphis, and Missouri paid to move it to St. Louis.
Okay. Interesting. So I see a strong chance of 3-1 here, and maybe 4-0 depending on what Kansas State is.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and you throw that Vandy game in there, and look, Vandy pushed them here last year and is improving. Yeah. But Missouri fans are going to look at this and say, we should be 4-1, after 5 weeks. And it was interesting. And I don't think he quite realized what he was saying. But at one point this year, Eli Drinkwitz did talk about, I asked him something about, what he would say to people who ask where the progress is. And he pointed out next year's schedule and said he appreciates the administration for building a schedule that should offer them an opportunity to get off to a good start. Well, once you say that, you better deliver on that good start. Right? Like, you can lose to K-State at home because it's a good program. Chris Kleiman's a good coach. Sure. If you lose that game, nobody's panicking and kicking everybody out the door of the facility. But if Missouri is less than 4-1 in those first 5 next year, there's going to be a lot of people that are fairly restless in Columbia.
Well, and then it probably turns into a second loss on October the 7th against LSU, though it is Missouri. I mean, look, it could be a worse schedule, but I think LSU in my mind, would be the team from the West I would least want to face right now.
Yeah, and we do this every year. I think the teams that are kind of in the lower half of the SEC, their fan bases look and every year it's like, man, this is a hard schedule. Well, it's the SEC. This is what you signed up for. There's no easy schedule. I mean, truthfully, the last few years, like last year's schedule, Missouri got Auburn and Arkansas out of the West. Who would you rather have had? I mean, that's as easy as it could get, because none of us saw the tire fire that A&M was going to be.
Right.
So, look, you're going to play tough games in the league. And we mentioned, I mean, if Missouri starts 4-1, like 5-7 is still very much in play. The back half of that schedule is tough. And I would assume it's going to be very much like this year. I would bet Missouri's over-under on the season is going to be set at about 5.5.
Yeah, I might take the over given that defense, but
well, it needs to be. It needs to be.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah. I mean, 6 wins does not perpetually excite a fan base in the SEC.
Well, and you eventually hit a point like, Drinkwitz ramped up the recruiting. There's no question. But by year 4, it can't be the last guy's fault. It can't be that he didn't, especially in the era of the transfer portal. I mean, I went through and counted. I think there's like 8 guys that he didn't sign that are going to be on this team this year. So this is fully his team. And if that team can't be better than 6-7, then you've got to hit the point, especially when the AD didn't hire him. You're going to hit a point where you go, what are we doing here? Like, why we're just treading water every season. I mean, look, Barry Odom got fired after 4 years for being a 500 coach. Eli Drinkwitz goes into this season 17-19 as Missouri's head coach. So,
well, recruiting can get a coach fired 2 ways, and before long, if it could be the other if they don't break through a little bit. But it'll be an interesting year. Anything we left out in our discussion of the Tigers here, Gabe?
Not that I know of, man. I mean, I think we covered most of it. I don't know. We didn't talk about Harrison Mevis. He's back again, but
that's right.
The nation's most famous kicker, right? But that's about it.
Yeah, well, I mean that. Hey, all joking aside, Missouri played a lot of close ball games last year. And probably going to be some next year, and he was not probably his best self. He probably had a better season the year before than last year, but that is an asset. We laugh about kickers, but boy, in college there are times when if you really don't have one, it can hurt.
Nobody notices special teams till they're bad, and Missouri's weren't very good last year. And I mean, the optimistic Missouri fan goes, hey, we lost one game on a freak penalty that nobody understands against Kentucky, and we lost a second one when our All-American missed an extra point, and then we fumbled literally going into the end zone at Auburn, right? So if you flip those 2 games, you're looking at 8-5, and everybody feels a whole lot better. But I don't know, Chris, that's not really how scoreboards in sports work, right? All anybody knows is that they were 6-7.
All that was lacking in Missouri's season last year was like a 5th down kind of play, it seemed like.
Yeah, there have been
probably
some
brought up some very
things.
bad memories. Yeah,
I mean, like after the Kentucky game, I remember writing. I said I've seen enough Missouri football that I never come here thinking it's possible for me to see a way that I've never seen. I saw a way I'd never seen in that one.
Well, let's be honest, that's a dumb rule, and I hope that's one that gets addressed in the offseason. Yeah, because what are you supposed to do?
Exactly.
But in any case, hey, Gabe, you're the best in the business at this. You're a good friend. Tell folks where they can find your coverage.
Yeah, powermizzou.com. See right up there in the background. That's marketing there. Just go there, missouri.rivals.com. You can check it out. Obviously in the midst of an interesting basketball season, but I understand it's the SEC. It's football season 12 months a year.
That it is. Okay, he's Gabe DeArmond of Power Mizzou. I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 14. Thanks for watching our videos. We will preview the 2023 season in winter and then probably do it all over again in the summer for every team in the SEC. So best way to catch that, hit the subscribe button. If you like this, hit that too. That helps us out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again with more football, basketball, and baseball coverage at Southeastern 14.